Tasmanian lobster fishermen are going through unsettling times. Catches are down, quotas have been cut, and pests are causing big problems. Professional fishermen say they've had to sacrifice a lot and are calling on recreational anglers to share some of the pain, as Fiona Breen reports.
It's a deceptively calm day off Tasmania's far southwest coast. But Squizzy Taylor, the man in charge of this 19-metre lobster boat, knows the seas here can quickly turn hostile. Flat calm or big seas, rain, hail or shine, the work continues with little rest. Shooting, as they say, 50 pots twice every 24 hours. A storm is approaching, but the pressure is on to work through the bad weather. The price of southern rock lobster has risen sharply while they've been at sea and is now fetching a near record $100 a kilo. The lobsters cover the seabed at this spot. At depths of 80 to 100 metres, the lobsters are crawling into the pots as soon as they hit the bottom.
How do we get out of that? Yeah! Woo!
And it's time to make money.
Make it all work! Whoa!
Squizzy Taylor decides to make a quick trip into Tasmania's southernmost fishing port to unload. He's got a tonne of lobster on board, so at today's prices he's expecting a $100,000 cheque.
Been out 10 days, well 10 days today. We've had worked some rough weather. The swell's been up the whole time, like 4 metres, and it's been 30 knots for probably the last 4 days, so the guys have earned every cent they've earned. And yeah, we just had to do it. It's $100 a kilo, so you do have a drive. While it's good, you just got to keep going.
The two deckhands will get a good paycheck as well. Just reward after working through the harsh weather conditions.
We had one come over and sit us on our bum. That wasn't very nice, but yeah.
Just come out of nowhere?
Yeah, a freak one. We were punching into the weather, and then we had one that come on the side, and yeah, we thought it was going to go under, but no, it kept on getting higher and higher.
Despite a forecast of more bad weather, these fishermen are planning a quick turnaround before the lobster price drops.
Yeah, it just wasn't worth the risk of staying out a couple more days when the price is $100 a kilo. So what we would have caught in 2 days, we would have lost in this load. We've got about 1,000, 1,100 kilos on, hopefully 1,100. And hopefully we'll just go put the money in the bank.
On the dock, fish processor Stephen Bartels is also in a hurry. He knows Asian markets are ready to pay top dollar.
I think there's too many rich people in China at the moment. Yeah, they say the economy's growing and the percentage of rich people over there is getting higher, so that's great for the Australian economy, great for our seafood.
Let us know when that water stops too, Gary. Yep.
The live lobsters are pulled carefully out of the hold and crated. Those with all their legs and antennas will attract a premium. Back at the processing factory, they're boxed carefully with wood shavings before being air freighted to the market, from Southern Ocean to a restaurant in Hong Kong.
They have to arrive live, so they go back into tanks, into the restaurants, and you as a customer walk into the restaurant and say, I want that piece there, and that's the way we get the best price.
So from the Southern Ocean to a Hong Kong restaurant?
Yep, in 48 hours.
It's been a tough season for Squizzy Taylor, and it's a relief to make some good money. The 37-year-old fisherman has been leasing the bulk contender for the past 7 years. He also leases most of his government-allocated quota. The costs keep piling up, and now is the time to pay off some debts.
If you look at the guys, they'll be 7,000 each for 10 days' work. But it's tough when it's bad. You go back 3 years ago, I was selling them off the Margate Wharf for $40 a kilo. Well, just to cover our expenses, never made a cent for 6 months.
Ross Parker is working off Tasmania's east coast, where catches have been low in recent years. Today, the lobsters are few and far between.
Oh, it's an unreal price, but you can't make any money out of blank pots.
Have you seen it at this price much?
Never. Not this time of the year. In the winter they get probably a bit more, but for this time of the year it's unreal.
On the day Landline catches up with Ross Parker, the price has dropped from $100 when Squizzy Taylor came into dock to $80 a kilo. It could be different again tomorrow.
Well, that one there it'd probably be $70, maybe a little bit more. If I was a praying man, I'd start to pray now. But it is getting late in the season as well, like another month, and it'd hardly be worth even looking at putting a pot in the water here now.
Lobster fishermen working off Tasmania's east coast have recently endured some extraordinary setbacks. Last year, a toxic algal bloom forced the closure of the fishery in peak fishing time. Ross Parker was one of the lucky ones with the resources to travel long distances away from the algal bloom.
Oh, I went to the south coast, but like I think it was February sometime before this was open last year, and
the Tasmanian Rock Lobster Association's Rodney Trelogan has been in the industry for 30 years. He's never seen anything like the algal bloom before.
That's a real worry. It's probably the biggest, caused me more nightmares than everybody else involved, especially the fishermen. We were just terrified that it was going to start again this year. Where we are here now, this fishery didn't open until mid-January last year. They got about a fortnight's fishing on the quota that they had. The other side of the line gets hammered.
The lobster fishery has also been hit hard by another natural phenomenon. A strong East Australian current, reaching further south than ever before, brought with it a destructive pest, the Centrostephanus sea urchin. It settled across Tasmania's east coast, thriving in the lush rock lobster and abalone habitat.
The problem is not the urchin per se, but when the urchin numbers build up to the point that they destructively overgraze the seaweed or the kelp beds. So that affects a transition from these very productive, high diversity, luxurious kelp beds through to what we call urchin barrens habitat. And on urchin barrens there's no seaweed, it's a crash of production, enormous loss of biodiversity, and in those areas the abalone and rock lobster numbers are extremely low and cannot possibly support any level of commercial fishing activities.
Marine scientist Craig Johnson came up with an ambitious plan to help control the urchins. Luckily, rock lobsters find urchins delicious. So Craig Johnson and his team transferred thousands of big rock lobsters to urchin-populated areas. The big lobsters munched their way through an incredible 85,000 urchins over 2.5 years.
The translocations initially kick-started the population of big rock lobsters, but the smaller ones growing through have now overtaken those. So those closed areas have had a pretty dramatic effect on the population of the very large ones. And as I've said, at least at the site where the barrens are just forming, it's been a very dramatic response to that build-up in numbers.
It's not enough though. While lobsters are key to keeping competitors like the urchin out of their habitat, they can't do it alone.
Simply, it's going to be human intervention in collecting them or culling them, and that's only going to happen in shallow water, down to about 15 metres because of limited dive time. In depths deeper than about 15 metres, we're really reliant on the lobsters. And of course, that's where most of the urchin barrens are. Most of the urchin barrens are between about 15 and 40 metres. So you're not going to see too many divers working down in those depths. They just can't stay there, sufficiently long. So we really are reliant on the lobsters doing it for us in those depths.
Because of all these pressures, the Tasmanian government has put a cap on the total allowable catch on Tasmania's east coast. For the commercial industry, it's 119 tonnes. Rodney Treloggan says that's about 20 tonnes lower than the amount fishers normally catch if unrestricted.
Well, over the last 5 years, the commercial catch has been reduced by around about 30% or 1/3. And currently on the east coast where we are at the moment, we've just embarked on a season that will involve a catch cap, which will limit the amount of fish that are taken by the commercial fishery from the bottom end of the south coast to St Helens Point. And those measures have been taken to ensure that we start to rebuild the biomass, which is the number of lobsters on the bottom here.
Recreational fishermen have had their catch capped too, at about 80 tonnes. Their daily catch allowance has been reduced from 5 to 3 lobsters. Scientists are asking if further restrictions are needed.
The challenge is to ensure that as the lobster populations build up, that excess of, that increase in numbers isn't then accessed at a higher rate by the recreational fishers. At the moment, for these east coast shallow inshore reefs, the recreational fishing component is about half of the catch off those reefs. So it's a small proportion statewide, but on the affected reefs on the east coast in shallow water, it's a much larger component. So limiting the catch, preventing the recreational catch from just skyrocketing as the lobster populations rebuild on these reefs is a challenge, and I don't think that it's a challenge that has been adequately met yet.
Professional fishermen certainly feel they're taking a hit to help the lobster fishery restock. They have a stringent record-keeping system. By way of contrast, a small proportion, less than 4% of recreational fishers have their catch rates monitored via a telephone survey every 2 years.
We have some major concerns that the records and the decisions that are made are not made on science. A lot of our decisions are made on the best science and everything available, but when you've got a Mickey Mouse phone survey thing and all the decisions that are made, or a lot of the decisions that are made, are predicated on these figures that there's no basis to give anyone confidence in them, that's an issue to us.
But a spokesman for recreational fishermen says the survey is accurate.
We did have a 40% reduction in the bag limit, and that has had an effect on the catches on the east coast of Tasmania. And the scientific data proves that beyond doubt.
And you've come to that conclusion through a phone survey.
Which conclusion is that, sorry?
The conclusion that catches have gone down.
We haven't done the survey. It's independently undertaken by...
It is a phone survey.
It is a phone survey, yes. Yeah. And as I say, an independent expert has validated that phone survey process and identified that it is world's best practice.
Despite these divisions, there are some promising signs for the industry. Researchers working with the Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies are counting the number of juvenile lobsters settling in about 5 areas across the east coast.
Bonanza. Here we go. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 perilous. They all look like they're posts at the moment, so this will be all settling in at about the same time, or all coming into the collector about the same time. There you go.
How old?
Ooh, I guess they've just gone through their first molt, so a couple of months, something like that.
Caleb Gardner, who's been supervising the monitoring of the juvenile lobsters for almost 20 years, says the numbers are up.
There are some large areas of the East Coast which have the total biomass, or the total amount of stock, which is only at about 10% of its natural levels. So that's a concern for those particular areas. It's not a concern about sustainability, because around the whole of Tasmania we have egg production at about 40% of its natural levels, and that's extremely high levels of egg production for any fishery, so that's very, very healthy. But in particular parts along the East Coast it's very depleted.
The big question will be whether these tiny lobsters will grow to full size.
The growth rates of lobster vary remarkably from fishing ground to fishing ground. Here on the East Coast, they grow pretty fast, but round on the far southwest of Tasmania, the growth rates are really slow. And that's why the industry and scientists have got together to move small crayfish from the far southwest to shallow waters up on the west coast.
This vessel, the Climax, is preparing to head round to the south coast. It's on a mission to catch 40,000 small lobsters and transport them north as part of the fishery recovery effort.
So we were looking at working around this area here at Port Davey and moving the lobster up towards Point Hibbs, just south of Stormy, in these few areas here that are allocated, and above Low Rocky.
Just a wonderful sort of natural situation where we can move animals over a fairly short distance and get that big increase in productivity. So it's the sort of thing which people do on land all the time with stock, of course. You know, you move animals between areas.
This fish transportation project is heading into the same waters as those frequented by Squizzy Taylor and the Bold Contender. For this fisherman, the jury is still out on whether moving lobsters is the right thing to do.
I don't like mucking with nature. You're taking fish from what have lived in that area all their lives and you're bringing them in somewhere where they haven't been. Yeah, that's the bit I don't agree with.
So you're just not convinced yet?
I'm not convinced yet, but I'm open-minded.